Thanks so much for having me on, guys. Seriously.
Hey,
Oh,
thank you for being on.
And here's another thing that I want to share with you right off the top. No, I never do any interviews without Gordon. That's Gordon. I bought him
nice.
in 1981, and he does all interviews with me.
Awesome.
He's a
That's
service. He's my service puppet.
Welcome everyone to the Canadian Talkin Shop podcast. My name is Stu Francis. Joining me each and every week is my co-host, the king of the Cheems meme, the funny little yellow dog, Mr. Mike Barkhouse. What's going on, brother?
Just loving life, having a wonderful day here. The heat's gone, so everything's just a little average. Cooking up some burgers in my kitchen for everyone that's watching on YouTube.
I love the fact that you're just so joyous now because you've just recently moved and the listeners were last informed that you were moving a couple weeks ago, and it seems that the move is sitting well with you.
Well, yeah, just look at the kitchen that I got.
Hey, right, you moved into the industrial kitchen. I don't blame you.
Yeah, and last week, all the construction that was going on in the background, so it got up really quick. It only took 7 days, so I'm pretty impressed.
I'm pretty impressed with you too. I mean, you're a perfect example of anything is possible when you put your mind to it. So bravo, Mr. Barkhouse, bravo. And while we're sitting here and on the subject of going over all the great stuff that my co-host is into, we want to also thank everyone for the campaign to 50 YouTube subscribers for the month of August. We didn't quite hit 50 in the month of August. We did end up hitting it a couple days into September, but we thank everyone that's subscribed to our channel. And if you're listening on YouTube right now, click that little button on the top, subscribe. We got a great guest for today. And before we get into our guest today, we're just going to get a few things out of the way. So with that being said about the subscribers, we're looking at getting 100 subscribers now for the month of September. Why not? Let's double that number. Let's get to 100. So if you can help us doing that by tagging the show and take a screenshot if you're listening and let us know. And let's get to 100 subscribers on the YouTube channel. Send us a comment in the comments. Let us know that you subscribe. Let us know that you're listening. And as well, if you're going to take the screenshot, tag it on Instagram, CTS_pod on Instagram, or CT Shop Pod on Facebook. And I know that TikTok is the popular thing right now, and I've been resisting for so long. But soon, indeed soon, I will be taking part in the talking of the tick, because that seems to be where all the kids go now and where all the people go viral. So you will be seeing all of this on the talk tick or the TikTok whenever, but
All the kids?
soon. All the kids, yeah.
So you're admitting that you're old now?
I am. Oh, for sure. Once you get to close to 35, it's all downhill from there, right?
I thought you were 45.
No, that's you. Remember, you're the one that's getting close to the AARP card. You're lucky we don't live in the US. But also to follow us on the TikTok. So CTS_pod, never mind, Mike. It's been fucking 5 minutes and the show's already off the rails. And we're also looking for a new co-host, ladies and gentlemen. So, but in all seriousness, let's introduce our guest today. And today's guest is a very special guest. And our guest is a former drummer for the bands Trixie Goes Hollywood and Big Time, and is also a current writer and actor for the Canadian television show Pink is In, available on Bell or Virgin TV. Introducing Kim Lombard. How's it going today, Kim?
Hey guys, how's it going?
It's going well. It's going well. How's it going on? Are you located in Ontario still?
I am. I'm living in Burlington, Ontario now.
So you're my neighbor because I'm a Milton boy.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Yeah, you just up the road.
Yep, I was actually born in Burlington, fun fact, at Joseph Brandt's, because in 87, they weren't doing C-sections in Milton, so.
Yep, I'm a stone's throw from there. So yeah, I know exactly where you were born.
That's cool. So how long have you been living in Ontario? Like, are you born in Canada or?
I was actually born in London, England, and moved here. I moved here when I was 4, but I've been back to live there a couple of times. But mostly, yeah, Toronto. I lived in Toronto for many moons, and then finally had my fill of it, and moved to Oakville for a few years, and now I'm here in Burlington, and I actually really like it here. It's awesome.
Burlington is cool for all the GTA towns. I'm personally looking at relocating to Niagara. It's where my work is. I commute back and forth every day with Font Hill. So as you would know, it's a drive. It's about an hour and 10 minutes. And with the traffic becoming ever more increasing, it's getting a little more than that. But Burlington's one of those towns I can really stand. Like if I was to move there, I would be okay with living there. But everywhere else in the GTA, I am just over it.
Yes, I have to agree with you. Even in the 4 years I've been here in Burlington, it's changed so much. And you can clearly see developers eyeing up little areas, little pockets they want. Like, for example, where I live, I guess it's sitting on about 2 acres and it's just prime real estate. And you just know at some point the developers are going to knock on the door and ask if you want to, sell so they can put up a 30-story building, that sort of thing. But yeah, Niagara's really happening. In actual fact, yesterday we were doing location scouting for the show, and we ended up in Niagara at a couple of vineyards where I consumed my weight in red wine. So I I'm drinking coffee. In fact, I'm pounding coffee to try to get over yesterday. So
nice, that's awesome. And Niagara's the perfect spot for that. And I really got to see, I've done some drives on back roads, and I've really got to see how beautiful Niagara region is, especially with all the wine and the vineyards and stuff. Oh man.
Yeah, we were in a little town called Jordan, and I'd never been, and I was so impressed. You're absolutely right. It was a fabulous hang. That little band on the patio outside. It was a good time. So yeah, I recommend that to your viewers and listeners.
Awesome. Well, it's still nice to know that people are having good times, because Mike's out in BC. And Mike, what's it like right now out in BC with all the COVID restrictions and whatnot? Because we haven't touched base on that in a while. I know you guys just introduced the passport, just like we're doing, right?
I've been kind of isolated just from like moving and stuff, so I've just been trying to chill. Like, so I know that the mask mandates out there, where my freedom of just being able to go into places that I bragged about, and can't do that anymore. But I went first 2 days without a mask, and I walked into a place like, oh, like, I don't got a mask, I'm so sorry. And the one place I walked in, they weren't wearing masks, and they looked at me all weird. They're like, well, do you want one? And I'm like, well, I thought there was a mandate. And they're like, yeah, but we don't care. And it just hit me by surprise. So a few places were like that, but now it's everywhere is a mask. Like, none of those places exist. So like the first few days, it was like people kind of, I guess, getting on board. But on another note, you were talking wine. I'm curious what your preference in wine is. Like, what's your which one do you like?
I tell you what, I'm not super knowledgeable, but I do like a Shiraz.
Oh, right on.
To be honest, I'm a beer drinker. Love Beck's, love Stella, but you drink what's there, and it was either that or I think some fermented peach schnapps. I don't know what else they had. So I took out the bottle of Shiraz and consumed that.
It's like a smorgasbord, I guess, if you're at a winery.
Well, they were, obviously they're pushing their own vineyard and their products, but in all fairness, it was really nice. It's good. The place is called De Profio, and they're very kind to us because they're going to let us in season 2 of Pink is In, which I'm sure we'll talk about further down the road here. There's a big scene where they're in a vineyard, and they really embraced us, and they're like, yeah, sure, that'd be great, even though we got to dig about 20 holes around the vineyard because they're looking for something, and they're cool with it. So yeah, it was a good time.
That's awesome. And I really do want to dive more into Pink is In, but you've lived quite a fascinating life and you've done so many different things. So I kind of want to take it to the beginning here of where you started off on your journey. But before that, Mike and I were just really curious. How did you come about even stumbling into the show here?
Oh, it's a great story. Because I played drums for about 35 years, what went in, and you guys will both know this, when you watch drummers, what are they? I can't even do it anymore, but I'm going to give you a reasonable facsimile of what I used to do for every song and every gig was this with your hair like you're a frickin' Muppet. You had the big mop of hair. So after doing that for 35 years, blew out my neck, and I started to lose feeling in my arms, especially my left arm. So what happened was I had to go in for mega surgery, and I was wearing a neck brace, and I had to have this neck brace on for 47 days. I get a phone call from just one of the greatest people I've ever met. Her name is Lisa Crawford. Uh, Funny enough, just moved from Niagara Falls area, and she's from Durban, South Africa. And she called me up and she said, "I understand you write. I have this idea, and I was wondering if you would be a character in my little short that I'm going to do." And I said, "Well, I'd love to, but I've just had this surgery, and I'm actually on flat on my back with a neck brace on." And she said, "Oh, that's too bad," and she hung up. So of course you're sitting there just glazed over. And I thought, well, why can't the character be wearing a neck brace? So I called her up and she's like, "Beautiful. No problem. You come in, you're wearing a neck brace and walking with a cane." They thought that was hilarious. So anyway, long story short, did the little, helped with some of the writing. There was another writer on board, Carolyn Pazinas. And we did the little demo, and that was the end of it. As you do in this business, you do tons of projects and you hope that something sticks. About 3 months after we did it, I get a phone call. "Okay, start writing. We got a deal." And I'm like, "What? That's incredible." So she scored a deal with Bell 5 TV. And I sat down and wrote another 8 episodes. I'm pretty sure I've written 16 now, but we did the first 4 and we're able to score a deal with an agent in Los Angeles that shops deals in the States. And now we're just getting set to do season 2.
Yeah, which is really cool because it gives me that Trailer Park Boys vibe of how it started. It's very grassroots Canadian. It's got like Canada written all over Pink is in, just the
Yeah.
Hamilton reference, especially being Ontario boy and watching it. And you're making all these references of stuff in my backyard, which is really cool. But you can feel that if given the right vehicle, the show can go in so many different directions, right? So it's just one of those really funny things that you just stumbled into it. And we're going to talk more about Pink is in as time goes on, but let's start back as your years as a drummer, because
Sure.
correct me if I'm wrong, you kind of got into the arts and just music period started with drumming before you got into writing and acting, right?
That's correct. Yeah. So that's kind of a cool story too, because I finished high school, did a year in Europe, traveling around as a lot of people do. And then I had it in my head that I wanted to work in a hotel. No idea why, but decided this is what I wanted to do, work as a general manager in a hotel. I was working away, digging the gig and everything. They fired everybody in the hotel that I worked for except 4 people. And I was one of the 4 they kept. At the same time, I had a buddy of mine who said, "Oh, I want to put a band together. I didn't even really know how to play drums. So I didn't sleep for 3 weeks while I was trying to decide, should I stay with the hotel business? Should I become a rock star? What am I doing?" And so I finally had to go to my boss and say, "Look, I'm so sorry, but I'm quitting." And he's like, "No, you're an idiot. You got to stay with us." Anyway, put a band together called Trixie Goes Hollywood. We came out, we could barely play our instruments, and we just, for whatever reason, it took off. And we connected with a couple of local DJs. We were in the very first Q107 homegrown contest, and we won the contest. So the song kind of propelled us to the next level. And then before you knew it, we were touring all over the place. And going to the end quickly, as all bands do, we imploded. And then that was the end of it. And so I sat for about 2 years, didn't know what to do next. And but that was Trixie Goes Hollywood. And of course, I carried on with a couple of other projects, and eventually ended up playing with a band called Big Big Time, where the guitar player was from England. He was from Birmingham, and the bass player was from Adelaide, Australia, and the singer was Canada's top male model 2 years in a row. So we had a really great front guy, it's always about the image. And before you knew it, we secured visas and we were living in New York for 2 years, and then 2 years down in Los Angeles. And again, as with all bands, they implode. So I ended up homeless, living in my car in the Pavilion parking lot in West Hollywood.
That's crazy. So it's like you had this dream of going into the hotel business, and then you end up somehow stumbling into starting to drum.
Yes.
And what year was all this? Like, when did your career start taking place with Trixie?
Wow. Let me tell you, I didn't actually start playing drums till I was about 19. I mean, I'd always messed around, but I wasn't really I didn't even know how to put a kit together. And I think the very first time Trixie sat down to kind of rehearse together was in September of 1979.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
because Q107, for context to some of the listeners, is a huge radio station in Toronto. They're mostly focused on classic rock now. It's always been their vibe, but now their niche is specifically that it's classic rock. So it's super cool that you got noticed that way because, as you know now, 97.7, which is a station based out of St. Catharines, they're the ones that are doing the new band search and whatnot and launching a lot of different careers. I mean, they helped. I can't remember the name of the band right now off the top of my head. I'll come back to it anyway. But a really popular band's out there, Glorious Sons. They helped propel Glorious Sons to big things. So that's cool that you were a part of that too. And then it leads you into the US, and then you do your deal with Big. And then you're homeless, like you said. So you're living in your car in the pavilion. What's next for Kim at this point?
A lot of drinking, I remember, because you're like, oh dear God, I've got to start over again. So I ended up, so where do I go from there? I ended up coming back to Toronto, and I actually gave my drum set away to a guy. And so I was walking down Danforth Avenue in Toronto, and I ran into an old buddy of mine that had a blues band, and he was desperate for a drummer. And I said, no, I'm not doing it anymore. I'm moving on to something else. And he's like, no, you got to do this for me. And so just by luck, the guy I gave the drum set to couldn't get a car, and he didn't come and pick up the kit. So I had my kit. And before you know it, I'm in this band called More Gravy, Meat and Potatoes. It was a blues thing. And the singer was, oh my God, he was awesome. He weighed 400 pounds, and he was an old blues dude with he had the whole thing going on. And I toured with them, and I actually did some of my greatest gigs with that band. And then when that imploded, again, they always do, I ended up playing with Mark Holmes from Platinum Blonde.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and so I got to do some fabulous gigs with Platinum Blonde. We were actually called The Breed. He didn't have that Platinum Blonde together at the time I played with him. He had a band, we called it The Breed, and because of who he was, we got to play some great gigs as well, and ended up playing with some good people. Like I was the percussionist, background vocalist, and the drummer was Randy Cook. Randy Cook, he's a big LA guy now. I think he plays he's in Smash Mouth. Do you know that band, Smash Mouth?
Oh yeah, All Star was a huge hit in the late 90s there.
Smash Mouth's a big one, yeah.
So the guys in that band were really great too. So anyway, so as you do, you just play with a number of bands. And then when that all blew up, I got a call from a crazy cousin of mine saying, hey, I need an actor. He was in France. He lived in France. So I ended up going to live in France in the French Alps. It was unbelievable for almost 2 years, right up to 9/11, actually. So I was what's called a motion capture actor. So that's where you put on the triggers and you stand in a boxing ring, and then you have like a semicircle of animation guys below you, and they ask you, okay, you're running now, or you've just fallen down, or you're jumping out a window, this sort of thing. So it was a really great gig. I did that again, almost 2 years. And then ended up getting into writing. Geez, how many hours is this podcast? We're just getting started.
It doesn't matter. It's as long as we want it to be.
Okay.
But it's so fascinating because even though you feel like you're rushing your story, it's that you keep managing to find yourself in situations where you get to do these amazingly cool things.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It was funny because I seriously was doing nothing. In fact, I think my girlfriend at the time had just fired me. The contract wasn't renewed, so I was pretty depressed. And my cousin's like, no, you got to come. I got this animation company. It's called 9 Points Media. You can look them up. We did a video game which is huge in Europe called Largo Winch. I'm sure some of your viewers, listeners would know it. So like I said, I don't know anything about animation or, so he's like, no, you can do this. So again, it was one of those things where I had nothing going on. And then all of a sudden I'm super busy doing this really cool gig. So yeah, I fell on my feet a few times.
Which is incredible. So that must mean that you must have an energy about yourself where you just almost surrender to the universe and the universe's plan and just go with it, because clearly it's like you end up in a situation, but I can tell just by your demeanor in this conversation that you're very much like, it didn't work out. And then with that mentality, understanding something's going to come next, and something has come next for you quite often. But I got to know, because I'm huge into music and whatnot. I need one of your best road stories. It doesn't matter what band, it doesn't matter what you were doing. I just want one of your best road stories that you'd be willing to share with us today.
Oh, wow. Thanks for putting me on the spot. I have a few. I was able to tour. We were opening act for Nazareth.
Oh, awesome. This Flight Tonight's a great tune.
Yeah. They were, oh my God. We opened for them. They were so loud. It was like white noise, how loud they were. They were incredible. I was really lucky. I mean, I remember opening for many times for bands. Like, I loved opening for the Canadian acts, like Jeff Healey opened for, and was able to play with Honeymoon Suite a few times, and
Cool.
Platinum Blonde. I was very lucky with regards to who I got to meet, just being the opening act.
But like, is there any one particular, like a Wild Crazy Night or something like that, or was there?
Oh Jesus! Well, yeah, okay. So one night I was in London, England, and a friend of mine, Claire Stanfield, was dating Simon Le Bon from Duran Duran, and so we were out pounding some pints in somewhere in Covent Garden, if I remember right, in London, and it was my turn to buy a round, and I went to pay for it. He's like, no, it's okay. Don't, you don't have to, right? So I bought the round, and I remember I used if I recall right, I used a 10-pound note. And when I got home, he had put the money back in my pocket of my jacket, which I thought was very nice of him.
That is pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I
I
mean,
thought
you're in fucking Duran Duran, man. You should be paying for
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Remember, that's just one that comes to mind. But yeah, I mean, as you go on the road, I actually started writing. I wrote a book called Smash Bike. It's available on Amazon and stuff. It's about a BMX game, a bunch of guys that play a BMX game. And then I decided, because people often ask me for my road stories, and so I started collecting stories for a second book, which I haven't actually started writing it, but I've been taking notes for a couple of years on it. And the book is going to be called Things That Almost Happened, But Didn't Happen Because Something Happened.
That's actually cool. I'm actually interested in reading that, because when I'm reading certain biographies and stuff, especially on my favorite artists and bands and whatnot, I love hearing the road stories. That's some of the like in Poughkeepsie and like all these weird towns in the US where the most crazy shit happens. Those are my favorite tales.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I'm the same. I just finished a book with Tony Iommi, the Black Sabbath guitar player. And I also read a book on Lemmy and Slash I've read, and you're right, they're all great books to read for if you want the backstory of what really happened. I remember one night getting Trixie Goes Hollywood was in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and we got kicked out of a bar. We'd finished playing, we went drinking in somewhere in Ann Arbor, and man, we must have been really out of control, because Ann Arbor's a university town, so it's pretty crazy to begin with. But I just remember marching through a hedge on the front lawn of the hotel, just tearing down this hedge. Anyway, we got a security escort out of town by the local police, and drove back to the border and crossed back into Canada. But yeah, we got to do some really cool stuff, and a lot of it involved alcohol.
As it should, especially coming up in the late 70s and 80s and whatnot. That's the time where it's got to be about alcohol, right? So what made you just stop drumming altogether and not pursuing it further? Because like you said, you moved into some different aspects and some different things. Was it just the time for you to be more creative? Because it seems like you don't like to stay on one thing for too long, and you like to just spread your creativity equally amongst the arts.
Well, you know what? I loved being a drummer. I loved being in bands and touring around. But as you get older, the body starts falling apart. Like, I was always marveling at Charlie Watts, the Rolling Stones drummer that just passed away. The guy was, the last time he was on tour, he was 78. Well, I'm much younger, and it was killing me to play. When you're young, you just go up on stage and start playing. There's no warm up. There's no, stretching or anything. So that was one of the reasons I got out. Just that the body was falling apart, and two, the ringing in my ears.
Yeah, fair enough.
From all the cymbals, But then again, like I said, I started having neck problems, and it took a while to realize, oh, this is what's happening. So I feel very lucky because I was able to have that surgery, and I'm like 100%. So I feel great.
Well, that's perfect. So clearly you had some health issues as a roadblock. You got yourself fixed up. And I believe it's at this point in your story arc where you decide to go to university in the UK for comedy script writing, or did this take place before you got into music?
No, it took place after, when I decided, okay, you know what? I've been there, done that. I'm a big comedy guy. Love stand-up comedians. I think I have close to 3,000 DVDs, and probably 90% of them are comedies. Whether they're good or bad, I buy them. I mean, I remember walking into a theater and there was not one person in the theater, and I sat down to watch Tom Green's Freddy Got Fingered.
That's it. I enjoyed that movie.
And just as the movie started, 7 diehard, hardcore Tom Green fans walked in and sat right in front of me. And when the movie started, they stood up and they gave him the wave, and they did the, they're bowing to the screen and everything. And at the end, I think 5 of them were asleep, and one guy might have died. I'm not sure, because it was just such a horrible movie. I mean, it's an absolute seminar on how not to write a film script. It was brilliant.
It's so bad, it's good. Yeah,
that's right. Oh God, yeah. If I ever meet him, I'm gonna, get him to sign it. But and I've watched it a number of times. But yeah, so what happened was I ended up going to London, England, and I went to a place called Thames Valley University. And I went there to learn, because I love British comedies. I'm a huge fan of things like the IT Crowd, Little Britain, even. It's super. I don't know if you know Little Britain. These are shows that are quite big.
The original Shameless and the original Office, I think, hold up to the American ones, and sometimes then some.
Yep, I totally agree with you.
That's the Britain humor I've been telling you about, Stu.
Yeah, that's like an ongoing joke that we have on the show here, is the Britain humor. Long story, we'll tell you another time.
Sure. But yeah, so this is actually a really great story. So I sit down for my first day in class, and the teacher's some big British stand-up comic. And what do they talk about? Everybody loves Raymond. Then they're going on about how great King of Queens is. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I come all the way to England to learn about British comedy, and you like Everyone Loves Raymond, and you like found common ground when they told me they liked Frasier, because I think Frasier was very well written.
Brilliant show. Better than Cheers.
Yeah, sure. But yeah, so what happened was they were fixated on American stuff, and here I was coming to England to learn about, to do their style of writing. But I have to tell you that since Pink Is In has come out, 3 or 4, like Richard Krause, I don't know if you know, he's a pretty big film critic in Canada. He said it's got a very British flavor to it. And that's a huge compliment to me, because I just think that British humor is just, it's more clever. It's well thought out. And like you said, Shameless is brilliant. I'm sorry, I'm blanking out. You named another one.
The original Office.
The original Office. Ricky Gervais, I mean, my God, Extras, it's brilliant. So yeah, that's what happened. I went, like I said, I went to school, went to university there, and then came back and worked on a million different projects that didn't go anywhere. But it was also a great learning thing for me to hone my craft. So I like I said, I've done a lot of different writing. I've written 2 film scripts, and I did The Drummist, which people can see. It's just on YouTube. So when I came back, I have a writing partner, Bill Daniluk, and we just said, who was also a drummer. And so we said, well, they always say, write what you know. So we ended up just for our own entertainment, our own amusement, we wrote The Drummist.
Yeah, I watched that one episode you had in the link. I thought that was hilarious, man, where you're the psychiatrist, I believe.
Yes. The therapist.
Yeah, the therapist. Yeah, with the last name. Yeah, that one kind of got me too. And then how you wrote the drummer to play on the last name, Double Dick Old Fuck, or whatever the hell his name.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun, and to be honest, we didn't feel any pressure writing that series because we couldn't get arrested anyway. So we said, well, let's just do it for our own amusement. And Yeah, and it worked out great. And in actual fact, we've done 12 episodes, but because of the virus going around, we haven't been able to meet up with people to carry on. But there's 24 episodes in total, and we plan to do all of them.
Right on. And I'm curious, like, is it your equipment, like your film equipment, or you guys just kind of gather, everyone's kind of got a little piece? Do you know what I mean? Because the filming was really good too, I thought.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it was. No, it's just our gear. It's like I said, it was super low budget to shoot. We do it in my buddy Bill's basement, and we both have tons and tons of drum gear, so we just stacked it all up and made it look like. So the idea for your viewers and listeners is that it's just a drummer that's completely washed up. He's kicked out of his band, but he truly believes it's just a matter of time before he gets back into the big leagues. Of course, now he's just reduced to living in his basement, in a basement apartment. So each week is just a new something that's happening to him that's sort of loosely based on things that have happened to us, as drummers.
And I seen there's a similarity in your comedy. Like, I didn't get to see the whole episode, the season of Pink is In over here in BC, so I seem to have a little bit of a problem getting it.
Yeah.
But I watched the trailer, and then I watched the YouTube, and your comedy is very, very similar, and I liked that. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
Just kind of how you do your thing, like, it's unique and awesome. I was onto another podcast there where I seen you were talking about a scene with the dildos, and you had to replace them with Barbies, or you didn't replace them with Barbies.
Yeah, so that's a great story. I wrote the scene where they have in the prison, they have dildo sword fights. So we did a deal with a sex toy company, and they sent us 2 18-inch dildos. And so we're shooting the scene, and then of course the suits come down from Bell, and they're like, "You can't! What do you do? You can't!" Guys just doing backflips. So they're, and in fairness, they're very, very good to us. They leave me alone to do, but there's certain things, you can't do it. So we kind of were wondering, so we took out the dildos and reshot the scene using Barbie dolls. And it actually is just as funny. I don't know why I kept going, "Oh, this is going to suck large." But when we shot it, it's actually quite a funny scene. So, and then of course because they bet on the fights, and we've got in the prison, they have this thing called Top Dog Dollars. So we printed out a bunch of money, and everybody's gambling on these Barbie doll fights.
So let's get into that. Let's get into Pink is In, because it's one of those shows I've truly heard about before we came into contact. And when you mentioned that you were a part of the show and whatnot, I'm like, wow, this is really cool, because here we are just getting to 50 subscribers, and here we have the actor and writer of the show contacting us saying you enjoy what we do. So
yes,
I thought it was really cool that I'm getting more into this show, because to be really honest with you, you know how it works when it comes to watching TV. Sometimes you'll see a TV show, an ad for a TV show, I'm going to watch that, and then you turn on the Netflix machine, and then you get lost in the Netflix world, right?
yes.
So when you approached me, I actually got into watch, because I have Bell 5. So for those listening, check it out on Bell 5 TV. It's available on demand. And also, too, if you're a Virgin TV customer as well, it's available on demand. But it's 4 15-minute episodes is the average, is around 15-minute episodes. And it's quite the interesting story that you've told in only an hour's time. So what made you decide to go, or the show in total decide to go on the shorter end of things with the time of the episodes and for the length of the season?
In actual fact, there was something called Queeby recently, and it was touted to be the next big thing. And it was a guy named Jeffrey Katzenberg who said, people don't have the time to sit and watch stuff. So his theory was, if you condense everything, people will watch it. They can binge watch, So we purposely actually wrote those episodes to be 15 minutes. If we're fortunate enough to get a bigger deal, then maybe they'll be stretched into a 30-minute version. But it just seems, that's the way the world is going, that people don't have the time. So you want to condense things into smaller segments.
That's interesting, because it's a different approach, but the approach that you're talking about is actually an approach that Mike and I have been thinking about on our own show, where we've kind of just been loose with our time, and it's like, we finish when we finish. But we're starting to realize in some of the feedback that we're getting is if we can condense the show in maybe like hour-long episodes, or if it's just him and I, or if there's a guest on, whatever, we have an unlimited, infinite amount of time when guests come on. We want to honor the guest and do the right flow. But if it's just him and I, let's condense down to hours. And because you're right, the attention span nowadays, it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So, but is it challenging for you to write 15-minute episodes versus having to write a whole half an hour? Because it feels like over the course of 4 episodes, it was like one episode that was just condensed down into 4.
I tried to write it like that so that it's a continuous storyline up until episode 8. Because the gist of the story is that it's it's a privately run prison that's just falling apart.
Oh, yeah.
And because we've seen Wentworth and because we've seen Orange is the New Black, which, by the way, I've never seen either show. I just know it's about prisons. I said to Lisa Crawford, the producer, I was saying to her, we should focus not so much on the inmates, but focus on the ineptitude of the administration that runs the place. So episodes 1 through 8 are just the story about how this place is falling apart, and they've got to figure out a way to pull it together, or they'll close. So in what you're saying is true. They each episode kind of links together, almost like a soap opera. But as we get to the end of those 8, the next, I've forgotten how many I've written, but the next batch that are coming out, they're just standalone, like almost like a Seinfeld thing where they're just different scenarios.
Okay, which is interesting because I kind of like following the story arc. Like I'm not going to spoil too much for the listeners, but Twister and Dr. Love, they have their own story that carries on through 3 episodes for episodes 2 to 4, where you kind of want to know where that goes next. And I'm assuming the vineyard and whatnot that you alluded to could have something to do with them because they are on their own journey right now. And there's a certain destination, wink, wink, watch the show if you want to know more. But even with Top Dog, like you said, Jim, with the Top Dog dollars and stuff, because this prison's so poorly ran, these guys are trying to figure out any which way to bring in money, to the point where they're bringing in these poor saps off the street to take selfies with gods. Oh, yeah. And then the girls are like stealing from them as they're taking the selfies and shit. Oh man, I thought that was pretty funny. So it's got a good, interesting story arc for only 15 minutes per episode, and I found that very unique.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that you've really done your homework. You've pointed out some really interesting things. But yeah, we sort of did discuss the idea that after the first 8 are concluded, then we'll move on to more sort of standalone episodes where we delve more into individual characters. So that's to come.
And is that intentional to just highlight and spotlight those characters, and then down the road go back to the evolution of a story arc that carries on over episodes, or is this just a different direction altogether?
I have to say it's a different direction altogether. That's not to say that you couldn't go into a soap opera format again, because Lisa, the producer, is the most positive person you'll ever meet in your life, and she says you better focus because you got to write 158 episodes. That's what she says. She's
Fair
like,
enough.
It's 8 seasons, 158 episodes. So get writing. So I believe her because she's such an optimistic, positive person. But the other thing is that when you shoot and you'd know this too, just as a viewer, you sort of see certain characters start to stand out more than others. So depending on what the fans and the viewers are looking at, I'll start to write more for that particular character.
Which is awesome, because one of those characters has to be old Granny BJ. I have no idea how you could possibly go on and not highlight more of old Granny BJ. Yeah. I find out of there's a few I'm going to tell about some of my other favorites, but in terms of acting and that confidence in the role, old Granny BJ nails it. We need to know more about her, but is the BJ what I'm thinking it stands for? So it is for old Granny Blowjob. Okay.
We're gonna find out, and there is a backstory to that, because she keeps going on that she's a matinee idol, but as the series progresses, you find that she's actually just a well, she was not just, she was a porn actress.
That makes a lot more sense now. Okay. Because I'm thinking like, because I don't know if you ever remember the episode of Seinfeld where Kramer's in LA and then he gets stopped in the apartment by the old actress from the 30s and whatnot. She gives me those vibes, like hanging on to, clinging on to that one success once upon a time. But hers seemed a lot more dirty than just that regular old matinee actress as she.
That's funny. Yes, you're right. You're right. Very good.
That's cool. No, and in some of my other favorites, definitely Top Dog's cool. Top Dog carries a confidence as well to be a top dog, so I could see why, yeah, you put her in that role. Also, some of the other characters that stand out to me is IQ and Hottie, especially IQ. IQ is like, she's subtly there, but there's something about her. It's not like she stands out a ton, but there's something about her you just want to know more of because she's so shy and so timid and so non-confrontational that you want to know more of her backstory. And then there's Hottie. I mean, it says it all in her name. She's a hottie.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Listen, I got to tell you, these are super talented people. So you mentioned Top Dog. The actress's name is Trish Rainoni, and she was on a CTV series called My Roommate is an Escort.
Oh,
And,
okay.
so she comes with some real experience. And the actress that plays Hottie, Natalie Butari, she's quite a successful singer pianist, and has a number of videos out. And then of course Margaret Lamar, who plays Old Granny BJ, she's got a resume as long as your arm. So we're very fortunate to have these people, and we're very fortunate to have the lady that plays the warden. As her name is Ellie Ray Hennessy, and she's the one of the voices on My Little Pony.
No shit. That's cool. I would have never have known that, but just that's it's like such a, especially if you see where the warden ends up near the end of the series, you picture that person and My Little Pony voice, and they don't add up,
No, but she's incredibly successful with that. As that's a huge series, but yeah. Everybody in the show is really an interesting group of people. And one of the things that I really like is that the cast and the crew are just a family. Because when you're on film sets, and I've been a stand-in a lot, I've stood in on a lot of films. You find that there's sort of the crew's over there, and the cast is over here, and then the background's over here. They're all separate, but on ours, everybody keeps saying we're a family, and that's super important, because it just means that people love what they do. And the only other time I've ever heard that is the cast and crew of a show called Arrested Development.
Oh yeah, one of the best shows of all time.
Yeah.
Until Netflix got their dirty hands on it, that is. But they did the same thing to Trailer Park Boys too. So, but you're right. You can sense that when you're watching it. You can sense that there is that bond and connection and that chemistry there. It's got that grassroots feel. It does have a very English undertone to it. I will agree, because I've watched a ton of English TV from, series that are more on the lines like cop shows and stuff like that, like Gracie and Frankie and stuff like that, and all them different shows, to more of the comedy type stuff. And there is that undertone feel to the show. So when coming up with Pink is In, what was the inspiration behind it? Because you mentioned a couple other very popular shows, Wentworth, Orange is the New Black. And I kind of feared that it would be too much like Orange, but it's not. It really sets itself apart.
I didn't sit down and go, okay, I'm going to make the show like this, but I have heard people say that it's a throwback to the 70s with things like Hogan's Heroes and Green Acres. And I know this is well before your time, but they were very successful shows that were very weird. They're just weird. And I love, like, for example, I remember one episode of Green Acres where she had what was called a top loading dishwasher. So the top opens up, and she was standing on one side of the room throwing the plates across the kitchen into the dishwasher like basketball. and then she would open another episode, I remember she was opening the kitchen cupboards, and the credits for the show were on the inside of the kitchen cabinets. Like, just really weird stuff. And I'm big into weird. The stranger the better. And so when you're, obviously at this point we have to sort of answer to the suits, but if you're lucky enough to be on something like a Hulu or an HBO or Showtime type networks, they pretty much leave you alone and anything goes. with regards to when I wrote it, I didn't sit down and say, oh, I want to make it like this. It just started flowing out of me. And then when we shot the first 4 episodes and I actually saw the actors bring the character to life, it made my life even easier. You mentioned IQ. She's a wonderful actress, and her name is Paige Locke, and she brought a real quirkiness to the character. She talked in this halting voice that I hadn't thought about or considered. So it just made my life easier writing more for her.
Yeah, I could totally see that, because her voice is part of the allure of her character, and the glasses, and just like,
Yeah.
how did this geeky little girl next door end up in jail, right? You want to know. And that's the cool part, is that a lot of their stories on why they ended up in jail haven't been told yet. So there's still so much to get to at that point, right? Is there something that you'd like to ask at this point, Mike?
You were kind of talking how the character kind of helps you develop in writing. Like, I don't have any TV series, but I write a little bit of a series on YouTube called Uncle Murphy, Murphy Matters. So I kind of relate to that with this one character that I added named Bruce. It's just a random character I added to this series, and he's just a wasteoid, like alcoholic. And I didn't think it was going to pick up. I just needed him as an extra. And then everyone's like, whoa, you know, he's really cool. And then all of a sudden I've got a little bit of a plan for Bruce when it came to me writing along in his stuff. And I thought it's got to be really cool to have an actual actor. See me, I just use a picture of a dog. Right. So I got to make the personality and all that stuff. But like, to actually have an actor and stuff, that's got to be really awesome. Like you said, you're not expecting that when they come in and play the role, but they give it to you and you're like, that's great, and you can work with that. So that's
It's true. They took it. A lot of the actors took it in a direction I hadn't even thought of. So it's very exciting to watch it come to life. One of the characters is guard Tiffany Fluffer, and she has a job at the prison, but does not want to be there. Doesn't want to work at all. And what a talented Hannah Turmack. She's so talented, and she surprised me the most because she brought dimensions to the character that I just hadn't seen. And so, you know, from now on, I know exactly how to write for that character. It's much what, like you were saying, Mike.
Yeah, I find that really cool. Like it's you're not like writing it as it goes, but it's kind of like that, you know, like with the creative process, like what you wrote on day one isn't going to be what you got on day two, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And you know, if you watch the, I don't know if you ever heard the story about the Seinfeld. My understanding is that they really only had a deal for 4 episodes. And if you watch the first 4 episodes of Seinfeld, and let's be honest, they're kind of weak.
They're awful.
Yeah.
And I'm the biggest Seinfeld fan in the world, but they're awful.
Yeah, but you realize, like I heard, and again, I've heard this sort of secondhand, that when Larry David found out that they got another 22 episodes, he went home, sat on his bed, and started crying, because he's like, oh my God, how am I going to write 22 episodes? But then by the time he watched those 4 actors bring his characters to life, it was way easier, you know, because, and even the way they morph, like the Kramer in the beginning is nothing like the Kramer at the end.
No, he's more of like a conspiracy, like weird, very weird and strange, but not in a funny way at all at the start.
Yes.
And then he becomes the doofus at the end.
Yes, I really agree with that assessment. Yeah, he's, and even I remember reading somewhere that even when his hair changed, he was in makeup messing around. I guess he was waiting for something. So he started sticking his hair up, and then he thought, that's really funny. And then he went with the hairstyle, which became a really iconic look, you know.
Huge. Oh yeah, especially because at the start, like you said, he was very, very short, and by the end it was almost like a full-on, like he got electrocuted or something like that.
Yeah, no, huge. It's just brilliant writing. But you know, here's another thing that I find fascinating with Seinfeld. They had between 14 and 16 writers, like people coming in, adding their little 2 cents to the scripts. The reason I'm a huge fan of a series called The IT Crowd, which is a must watch, is one guy wrote 39 episodes. The series ended, and then 5 years later they came back for a reunion show, and it was every bit as brilliant. And that's just amazing to me, that one guy wrote all those episodes, and every one of them are just so clever. And again, it's a British series, and it's a must watch. You have to see what they did with that. In actual fact, there's a guy named Matt Berry in that series, and now he's on he's in Toronto a lot because they shoot a series called What We Do in the Shadows. Are you familiar with that show?
No.
You'd really like it. It's from a New Zealand comedy troupe about a bunch of vampires. And so, yeah, it's called What We Do in the Shadows. And it's the same guy. The lead actor on the IT Crowd is also in this series that they've just shot here in Toronto.
Yeah, and I really respect that when it's like one writer or a set amount of writers throughout the whole season. I was watching Blacklist, and me and my wife, we watch Blacklist every once in a while, and they'd have a guest writer, and everything just kind of changes. Like, yeah, the plot line's similar and things, but you can tell. And we'd be watching this episode, and they were like, wait a minute, this seems strange. Do they have a guest writer on it? And like, we didn't pay attention to the credits in the beginning. And you can tell. We can tell sometimes, especially if there are these seasons we've been watching for a long time. It's like someone there that's got some clout just kind of came in, and they're like, here, write a lot about our series. And meanwhile, I call it me, the fan, or the viewers kind of watching going, oh, maybe the next episode they'll have the other writers back and we'll get down to some normalcy, but I know I love that. So I'll totally check that show out. Like one writer for the entire thing. That's really awesome.
Yeah. He's a brilliant writer. And you're so right about that. When you write, you're always adding to what's called the series Bible. So whenever I find, say, a tagline, like one of the characters on Pink is In always says, seal my blowhole. And another line is, I was a matinee idol, so that would go into the Bible, so that, if another writer comes in, he knows he has to incorporate that kind of stuff into the script, the particular script he's working on.
That's cool. So like it's a universal Bible then, like, so it'd be, okay, you're a guest on this, but you need to hip yourself to some of the key taglines from some of our characters, like old Granny BJ as an example. You wouldn't want to go without nailing that. That's really cool. I never knew that.
Yeah, so it's just to help other writers when if indeed they bring them in.
Well, speaking of writers, because correct me if I'm wrong, you are the sole writer for Pink is In, right?
Yes.
So what are some of you've mentioned a couple, and what are some of your big time influences in terms of your writing? Like who creatively stimulates you to motivate you to do some of the material that you do?
Oh, I'm so strange. I have every Woody Allen movie ever made. I'm a huge Woody Allen fan. I think the way he writes is brilliant. But I'm also a gigantic Todd Phillips fan. Todd Phillips is The Hangover. He did Due Date.
Yeah, I could see that being a comedic influence to you. Just some of the punchlines and the way that some of the characters deliver stuff is very reminiscent of Todd Phillips's work. So I could definitely see that.
Yeah, and he also did. I think he wrote. He did. He wrote Old School with Will Ferrell.
Yeah, that's a great movie. All of those movies you just mentioned are great, especially Due Date. I find Due Date doesn't really get as much attention as some of the others. And out of the three, I think if I was to have a gun to my head saying pick one and choose one right now, I would pick Due Date. I think Zach Galifianakis and Robert Downey Jr., their chemistry is just off the charts.
I love Zach Galifianakis. There's a scene when, for the whole movie, he's carrying a coffee jar with his dad's ashes in them. And they end up at Jamie Foxx's place. Jamie Foxx brews his dad. But Zach Galifianakis is a genius, because if you watch very closely, they're all sipping the coffee. And then they realize they're sipping the guy's cremated father, and they all spit their coffee out. But as that scene continues, you notice Zach takes another sip of the coffee.
He's very Kramer-like in his way. You can tell that it means a lot, because I've, as mentioned ad nauseum, a huge Seinfeld fan. I've read several books about Seinfeld, and one of the things they've always mentioned about Michael Richards, the actor, is that he would get really pissed off if people couldn't stop laughing during their skits. He would get to the point of like walking off set in disgrace. So you could tell Zach is very similar. But how the fuck do you not burst out laughing when you've got Michael Richards performing as Kramer, or Zach Galifianakis doing any character that this guy does? How are you not supposed to laugh?
Yeah, it's not easy. And I think I understand why they get, well, I don't know about Zach, but the Kramer character, Michael Richards, gets mad because he's probably in his mind going, this is the take, this is the take. And then Jerry starts laughing and he's got to do it again. And he's not worried. He's not sure it's going to be as funny as the previous take that was spoiled. I think that's why he gets upset, because he thinks he's nailed it, you know?
So what are some of the pet peeves that you would say you have being on different sets and whatnot? What are some of the things that really get you going?
Nothing. You couldn't ask for a better gig. It's ridiculous. You know, when the series is finished and they hand you a check and you're like, what? And they're paying me to do this? This is so much fun. You know, I get to stand by the craft table and eat the little mini chocolate bars all day long. And, you know, it's not a hard gig. I mean, to be honest, because I'm also one of the producers of the series, we're in pre-production at the moment. I mentioned that I was at a vineyard yesterday scouting locations. It is stressful because if you know, it's like, oh, you want a road story? So when I was in More Gravy, Meat and Potatoes, we were the opening act for a band called The Commitments, and it was a movie. It's about an Irish band that puts together a Motown. They want to be like a Motown band, but they're in our little town in Ireland. So they actually went out and toured for real. And we opened up for them on a few gigs, and we were playing at Lulu's in Kitchener, and it was jammed. Like it was a huge bar. And our saxophone player shows up with no reeds for his saxophone. And we're like, oh my God. So that one little thing could have screwed us out of the whole gig. We wouldn't have been able to play because he forgot his reeds. But it turned out the sound man knew the local music shop, and the guy rushed over and got my saxophone player some reeds. And his thank you was, oh, these aren't the size I use. You're using them. Shut up.
Jesus.
But the point of the story is that as a producer for Pink Is In, you got to remember everything. You know, you can't, you know, you forget one thing and that scene is a write-off. So we do have a fantastic props department and set decorator types. There's 3 ladies that we use, and they're just the best. But you know, it's up to them to make these copious lists of ridiculous little things we need. Like in one scene, Pip is he always carries aerosol cheese spray with him, and he's always squirting cheese spray into his mouth. So you better have that on for the scene, or the whole scene's screwed. You know, so that sort of thing. That's where the stress comes in. But the actual shooting, then it falls on somebody else to be stressed, and that's our director, Aaron. He gets to be stressed for the actual shooting part of it. But for me, no, God, no, it's the most fun I've ever had.
Well, especially because you touched on Pip, and it was a beautiful segue. Thank you for laying that out for me. But
oh, you mean Mike doesn't have to edit that part?
No, he doesn't.
Okay, good.
But you've been so modest. We haven't even talked about your acting portion of things. And you play a character called Pip, and you are the CEO of this private prison that is going underground. And I'm going to let you describe your character, but it definitely fits in with the rest of the management, let's say.
Yeah, so Pip, I don't know how this character came about, but Pip has this neck brace on, which we never explain why he's wearing a neck brace. It's never mentioned. He hasn't had an original thought in over 5 months. And he's just this he's high and he's stoned. And he runs the prison. Nobody knows why they've allowed him to be the CEO of the prison. And he just drives the warden to insanity. The warden is very organized. So the idea behind the warden is that when everybody sees her, she's totally together. But when she's alone in her office, she's a serial dater. She's a serial online dater. And she's just as nuts as Pip Barnett is, her boss. But when they're out amongst the inmates and staff, she's really together. So the Pip character is just this drunk, stoned guy that is super annoying.
Yeah, he definitely, like, even his presence, as soon as he shows up to the prison and starts banging on the door and hitting the doorbell, they're like, ah, man, here we go.
Yeah.
It's just another day. And then, and then, not to spoil too much of it, but your character actually takes one of the inmates, Hottie, out to Hess Village. So you're now sneaking inmates out of the prison to go have fun with and take her clubbing and this and do all kinds of fun stuff. And I died at that part. I'm just like, that's funny, where it's like, yeah, you're really painting the sleazy picture there.
So yeah, he's sort of, or he thinks he's dating one of the, I won't give too much away, but yeah, So Pip thinks that he's dating one of the inmates, but she's just using him so that she can get out of the prison all the time.
Well, yeah, 100%, because it's just like you got this big old neck brace on, and it's just man, I was wondering about the neck brace. So when you started talking about it at the beginning, I was chuckling there because it's like, oh, okay, makes sense why you were wearing that now.
Yeah, actually, this mop that I'm wearing right now is coming off in a couple of weeks. I got to cut it all off to get back to the character, but I'm doing my Johnny Depp thing. Like every time you see Johnny Depp, he's got a different hairdo. So that's why I did this. I thought, I'm not cutting it until we have to start shooting again. But in the next couple of weeks, I gotta cut it off. So
yeah, me too. I definitely have to do the same. My hair is always growing out, and it's just an absolute problem. And right now, as you can tell, it's like
it's out of control.
It's out of control. Yeah. So out of all the characters, watching back on the show, I imagine that you have went back and watched the show. Who are some of the characters that stand up to you watching it? And what were some of the characters standing up to you while filming it?
That's really cool, because 2 weeks ago, I actually watched the series. I hadn't seen it since we shot it. And I did that on purpose. It's like when you write a song, you distance yourself from the song. You can go back and attack the lyrics again from a distance. So the last time I watched the series was, like I said, a couple of weeks ago, and I actually was very impressed with. There's just one scene with her, but her name is Sarah Himes, and she says something about I got a need to share a moment, and she tells her cellmate how she killed her husband with using an icicle, and I was like, wow, that's great acting. Like her facial expressions, and very, 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 very strong actress. So like I said, 2 weeks ago when I watched it, she stood out to me. And I was also a big fan of the character Nezrenko, the one that every time you see her, there's subtitles.
Yeah, I found that funny. I'm like, why is this Russian nationalist in a Canadian prison right now?
Yeah, she was a lot of fun to watch the last time I watched it. So there's lots of characters to play with.
Absolutely. And then while filming it, what were some of the ones while filming it when you were just watching it go and you're like, man, that right there is going to look great on TV?
Oh, wow. Now you're talking about our DOP, our director, and our DOP, which for your viewers and listeners is director of photography. Raymond is our main guy, and he just has such a great eye, as does our director, and this is interesting. So the camera guy's from Texas, and the director's from Tel Aviv, Israel. And I think this really helps to make the show different, because they're coming in with all these different perspectives. The producers from Durban, South Africa. I know I've lived here my whole life, but I've got a British vibe to what I write. So it's like when you see a new band and they've just got a really unique and distinct sound. And it's often because they're from all over the globe and they've just met up. They're not all from, the bowels of Scarborough. And I think that really helped to make the show different. So the director and the DOP, they really gave it a look that almost like a film look to me. I don't know if you noticed, but it's incredibly bright. The colors are all very, very bright. So yeah, I think that all helped to make it different, and that's what stood out when I watched it. When they were shooting it, I mean.
No, that's really cool, because I've always been curious on what sets look like, and recently Kevin Hart was in town in Milton with Woody Harrelson filming Man from Toronto, and to just really sit back and watch filming take place, it was very, very fascinating to me. Yes. Where some of my friends were like, I could not watch that after 10 minutes, where I'm thinking, man, I could sit there for the whole 12 hours of filming and just watch every little nuance and detail, because there's just so much to watch. But one of the things I found fascinating was that they were recording during filming, I should say, during COVID. So, and obviously that's been very difficult for a lot of people. And it sounds like you're in the middle of filming season 2 during the Did you film season 1 during the pandemic as well?
Yeah, we did. So there's all new rules and regulations, frustrating as hell. But we managed to get through it. And this time will be much the same, where there are new rules and regulations. And but you just try to ignore it, because it's a bit of a downer, to have to deal with all this stuff, but you just ignore it and carry on, because you're doing comedy. It's got to be a fun vibe on the set. And like I said, it's a big family, so everybody's excited to start up. We start actually shooting on October 4th.
Excellent. So you're shooting on October 4th. And when do you project that season 2 will be released?
January.
January. That's excellent. So
pretty quick turnaround.
That's a really quick turnaround. Yeah, but that's great, honestly, because I know when did season 1 debut again?
Oh, it was last. Oh, wow. That's a good question. I think it was January as well.
Okay.
So, wow, it seems so long ago. Yeah. But yeah, so this next 4, and then there's apparently another 4 coming right after that. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, we definitely look forward to seeing more of Pink is In, but we want to wrap up and we don't want to take up too much of your time. We appreciate all the time that you have given us. But just off the top, if you want to give me 5 of your top favorite bands, now they can be your favorite personal bands or bands that inspired you or bands you played with, whatever have you.
I'm a big pop rock guy. I grew up, like I said, I was on the road in the 80s and 90s, and oh, that's really interesting. Well, I'm a huge from an entertainment standpoint, I'm a big fan of Van Halen with Roth as the front guy.
Okay, I was going to say Sammy or Roth.
Yeah, I love Roth. I mean, Sammy's incredibly talented too, but different vibe. And I love the songs. I love the material that they wrote back then. And then I'm also I'm a huge Black Sabbath fan. I think that he's the king of the riff. And I was 13 years old at Varsity Stadium, standing in the front row watching Black Sabbath the first time they came to Canada.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was
awesome.
Really quite something. And I've seen them probably 4 or 5 times, the original lineup. And I'm a big Led Zeppelin fan and big Def Leppard fan. And like, I'm a pop rock guy. I like hooks. When I was writing in my bands, we always said, okay, is that radio friendly? Is that radio friendly? Is some guy in Omaha going to want to learn that guitar solo? So everything we did, we tried to make as catchy as possible, like guitar solo wise, I was a huge fan of the Cars. Elliot Easton was the guitar player, and every single guitar solo he wrote, you could sing every solo. It was so melodic and so catchy. And that's the kind of music I like, is stuff that's just super filled with hooks, like a Def Leppard kind of a thing.
Especially Def Leppard. I love Def Leppard. The Hysteria album,
Yep.
I could listen to over and over and over again. All those bands you named, I'm a big fan of all those bands too.
Yeah.
And just the last things last, we have 9/11 coming up. It's the 20th anniversary, and I honestly can't believe it's been 20 years already. And considering you've lived in New York for a bit, we're actually going to be recording a special, Mike and I, about 9/11 that's going to release on 9/11. So we're just curious, where were you on the day of 9/11, and how did that affect you?
That's a good question. I was in my kitchen in Toronto, and I had just come back from France on September 10th, and then the 11th happened, and then a week later I was in New York City, and I was very uncomfortable crossing the border to go back down into the States, and then especially to go into New York and seeing it. It was horrifying. But one thing that was really interesting was every single building you went into a week after 9/11 had metal detectors and security guards, and it was really high security for obvious reasons. And I was back in New York almost a year later, and all the metal detectors were gone, and there wasn't as much security. And I realized people just went, no, you know what? It's time to put this behind us and move on. And I really admired them for that they weren't going to be intimidated by what happened on the 11th. And but yeah, it's an immense tragedy, and I'm glad you're doing a show about it, because it needs to be remembered as if it was yesterday.
Well, that's exactly what we want to do, especially because both Mike and I have been interested or moved by 9/11 in some shape, form, or fashion, that it didn't even dawn on me, to be quite honest with you. And I was kind of kicking my own ass about it. I'm like looking at Netflix, and they finally released a 9/11 documentary, because I love Netflix for their documentaries. They're just fantastic. They're like A&E. They just know how to do documentaries.
Yeah.
So they finally created a 9/11 one. And as I was watching, I'm like, Mike, we have to do a 9/11 special. We can't just not, especially 20 years. And I can remember where I was, like it was happening yesterday, just like you said.
Yeah.
So it's something that really needs to be talked about. And we don't want to go too in depth on conspiracies and such, just to give some of the listeners a preview. We just want to honor what took place and just speak about it. And we'll have some thoughts and we'll have some theories, but we're not going to do anything distasteful. So we invite you to check out tomorrow. If you're listening to this now, it's going to be coming out tomorrow. So look out for our 9/11 special. And Kim, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. Mike, do you have anything you want to get in before we let Kim go here?
I know it's kind of random, but you did sound work for Rick Mercer.
Oh no, actually I was an actor.
Oh, wow.
That's a kind of cool story. So I was a stand-in on the Rick Mercer show, and I think in that particular episode, they needed someone to pretend they were a sound guy for one of the skits that Mercer was doing. So they incorporated me as an actor for that episode. But normally I was a stand-in.
Oh, okay.
And this is kind of cool. So I think I'm at liberty to say this. One of the actors that's on the Rick Mercer show is a guy named Patrick McKenna. And I believe he's going to be guest starring on Pink is In.
Nice.
Yeah, Patrick McKenna he's fantastic. He's very funny. He was on the Red Green show for years.
Okay.
I don't know if you know the Red Green show. It was on for like 50.
Get out the duct tape. Come on.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, you're absolutely right. So he was the guy with the keyboard around his neck.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
Super nice guy, super funny. And I was his stand-in, and now he's coming on Pink is In. I understand he is anyway. I think they're still talking to him, but it sounds good anyway.
Oh, I look forward to that.
Yeah.
That's great. And honestly, thank you again so much for taking the time to talk with us. We're really excited to see where your show Pink is In goes. Maybe even next time we can get you on. Do you think maybe we can get a couple cast members on to talk some shop?
Oh God, yeah, they'd love that. Yeah, they'd
That's
love
awesome.
to do it.
We would absolutely love to have them. So we will definitely reconnect again. Kim, you have a very fascinating story. I feel like we still have so much more to talk about in the future, but it's Labor Day long weekend. We would like you to continue on enjoying this fine weekend. And again, thank you so much for coming on to the show today.
It's my pleasure, and you guys are awesome. And thank you so much for having me on the show. And I hope to be in touch with you again soon.
You betcha. Thanks for coming on. That was awesome.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that was honestly a really, really great episode. We want to thank Kim for coming on again. I know I thanked him 15,000 times personally, but we can't thank Kim enough for coming on and taking the time. It was so much fun. It was something different that we haven't done yet. And honestly, if you have Bell or you subscribe to Bell 5, or if you just subscribe to Virgin TV, look up Pink is In. We're going to include in the description the YouTube preview, but find it. It's honestly, it's an hour of your day, 4 15-minute episodes. And yeah, it's not like your Orange is the New Black. It's not like your Wentworth. It's on a total league of its own. So if you like grassroots stuff, especially grassroots comedy, go check out Pink is In. And then if you just so happen to be on YouTube, check out his bands, Trixie Goes Hollywood and Big Time. Leave us a comment. Let us know what songs you like. We'll be sure to pass them off to Kim. And other than that, Mike, you got anything that you want to plug?
Check out his Chip Barkhouse series that is also on YouTube. I thought that was pretty good. He's on, I believe it's episode 11. Yeah, it's totally worth a check out. So do that. And you guys can find me over at Cutlet House and whatnot, and with the dog memes and the dog world. I'm getting my tattoo here pretty soon, so I'll be sharing that up on the CTS page. And nice having you all listen. I really appreciate every one of you. Thank you for your time.
Honestly, thank you to all the new viewers that have come in through Mike's channels on Cutlet House Plays. We thank you very much for your support and coming through. We saw a big increase over the weekend when we started introducing ourselves to the funny little yellow dog community, and they've been nothing but great. So thank you very much. But to end this week, I am your Canadian Talkin Shop, Stu Francis.
I'm Mike Barkhouse from Cutlet House, signing off.
Come back next week and hear us talk more shop, baby.